is going on, y'all? I'm KMBest. He is Lambie Series. Together, we are 8 Cubes. We talk about the 8 most important topics in Marvel Snap each time we do a video. First up on the docket here, of course, is the nerfs to Leech and Dr. Octopus. Leech going from a 5/5 to a 4/4, which might not seem that bad, but his effect was fully changed. Now he will only leech opposing 6 drops. Meanwhile, Dr. Octopus going from a 5/10 to a 4/8, but instead of pulling everything, he is only pulling your opponent's lowest power card. Lambie, which one of these do you want to start out with?
Yeah, I want to talk about the leech first. I
All
think
right.
okay, because there's two, right? But I feel like both cards are like way worse, but leech is like way worse, right? Like so 4/4, okay, 4/4 nice first thing, reduce cost, but its ability is now like just so horrible in a sense that you only leech like 6 cost cards, right? And I feel like that's just like a whole spectrum of cards that you do not hit anymore, and it's so much like weaker. Like, I wouldn't feel good about playing this card even on like on curve on turn 4, even if I know I hit like something that costs 6, but like because like what exactly is 6 that like is that impactful in the game right now? There's no doom in the game. You hit like something else, it's like a like what Magneto's a 6/12. You hit Blob, obviously is nice, but like if you hit like anything else, the 6 cost cards are just big, guys. Like it doesn't really matter, right? And you playing a 4/4 to leech a card that would probably have big stats anyway is like not very significant, I would say. So yeah, I'm really down on the leech right now, which I guess is fine, right? Because people were hating on this. People hate on leech for its entirety in Marvel Snap anyway. So I think it's totally fine that it's the way it is right now. Leech probably will see like little to no play in the meta right now, I'm quite sure.
The thing I'm happiest about with Leech is that it has never fulfilled its own role
Yes.
successfully. It's never actually stopped these late game combos. Now it has a very defined role. Like, you want to beat Living Tribunal, you can leech it. You want to beat Hela, you can leech it. You want to beat a weird combo deck, you can leech it. But what it was previously doing was beating interaction. Decks like
Yes.
Thanos and Aurashem that got to free roll tempo were able to play Leech because they were so far ahead. And the usual way you want to beat a deck that is very far ahead of you is interaction. Shadow King, Shang-Chi, Enchantress, Leech turned all of that off. And that's why Leech was such a problem so consistently. This is a great nerf to me. Now, to start in on Dr. Octopus, first of all, I kind of like the 4/8 stat line for him. I kind of like
Mhm.
that he now wants you to be a more dedicated clog deck. I'm into a lot of things that are happening with him conceptually. I like Doc Ock. I think that this is not necessarily a buff, but again, he represented a specific class of card that was designed in 2022 that simply has not been updated for the modern era of Marvel Snap. Unless you want to say we are never ever making another ramp card, playing this stuff, Doc Ock and Leech, that were so oppressive when they're played ahead of the ahead of curve, you can't really have them in your game. They tell you you cannot do certain things as a game designer. And so I'm very happy they got rid of Leech, and I think I'm very happy they got rid of Doc Ock. And I think I group these cards with Professor X in terms of cards that just realistically, something has to be done about them at some point, and I'm glad we reached that point. A lot of people are going to look at this and say they nerfed these cards for Arashem's sins, and Arashem is still going to be good. And here's my thing: good. That's like the most sold card they've ever made. If you want, like, I know for a fact if they nerfed Arishem, these same people would be like, oh my God, they invalidated
Yes.
my investment. I spent all this money on Arishem. How could they have done this? The best possible outcome here is Arishem remains good and ends up being a reasonable meta deck, but doesn't run all these 5-drop awful garbage cards that make the game suck. That is my dream outcome here.
Yeah. For what it's worth though, I do think that Doctor Octopus is actually still quite playable.
Yeah.
Like you said, right, previously, it's a more dedicated clock card right now. Like instead of like one card clock entire location, you need to like play in a location where your opponent has some stuff, like a bit more stuff, and then you can clock them. Also, 4/8 tagline kind of nice, right? In case people complain about Doc always pulling Shang. Now Doc pulling Shang is actually fine.
Yeah, I guess it is. Next up is Loki, who finally got a rework that many have been asking for. Loki is now a 3/5 with an on reveal ability that swaps your deck with your opponent's starting deck, gives the deck -1 cost, and draws a card. In my limited experience with this so far, I've played a few hours of various Loki decks. It seems pretty good, but it also seems like the kind of thing that's hard to build a deck around. It's just like, oh, this is a good card. The obvious exception, of course, is it's phenomenally powerful in Arishem right now. It is an absolutely great card there. And shout out to Cassandra Nova, because I do think that this will mean that Arishem is going to be a reasonable, good option, and Cassandra Nova is going to be needed to keep it in check. Loki is excellent there, of course, a snap condition a lot of the time, and it is very powerful, but I don't know what other decks it could reasonably go in. Arishem gets to run it by virtue of kind of being a pile anyway, and so when I've played other Loki decks, I've played them as like these unfocused piles of random good cards, with the idea being Loki will handle the points, and then I need my like Juggernaut or Shang-Chi or whatever to be in my hand, because now your hand needs to be good before you Loki. You want your hand to be good before you Loki now, as opposed to the previous iteration, you didn't want your hand to be good when you Loki'd. Very different dynamic, very different deck building creation situation.
Yeah, so the thing about Loki is that I totally 100% agree on it fits in the POW decks right now, right?
Yeah.
Like just a bunch of cards with almost no synergy with each other. You
Yeah.
just play the Loki because firstly 3/5 gold standard of cards, and you play it early, you get to draw. Like, can you imagine playing Loki on turn 2 in an Arishem deck? It's like
Can I? Yes. I have done this. It's very
It's like
good.
it's like everything is discounted. You also have extra mana. You don't really care what is discounted, right? It's just free 99. So like I feel, yeah, Loki in Arishem is just one of those like more staple cards right now.
Yeah.
I guess another place you can say that Loki works as a card that works in a pile of cards is like Thanos, right? Because Thanos is also sort of like a pile of cards, you know. Like I mean, yeah, you
Mm.
do get rid of like the stones a little bit,
Yeah,
but
I like
it's still a pile of cards, you know. Like Thanos isn't supposed to run cards that like synergize very heavily with each other for the most part, anyway. So that's where I think it could fit. But other than that, though, I don't think you would want to play a Loki in like your typical mid-range Tina style deck, right? Because you actually run like legitimately good
yes.
cards in your deck already, you know. So I don't think you actually want to do that. I guess you could consider it as like Loki tech. Like if like mirror matches for a certain like deck are very heavy,
Yeah.
you can play Loki on turn 3, and if you know it's a mirror match, you get cheaper versions of the good deck that you are already playing. You know, like let's say a specific Tina deck is the top deck, so you play Loki as like the mirror tech, you know, because you get all the same stuff that you already have but cheaper over the course of time.
That seems like the most likely outcome here. I feel like a lot of the Athena decks are a little bit too focused, but if there's such a
Yeah, true.
big proportion of the metagame, Loki is going to be fine just being Loki, right? Like, this
Yeah.
is a weird card now, because once again, it's got like this invisible skill check to it of, do you
Mm,
actually even want to play this card? There are a lot of matchups where it's like, I don't really want to play this card at all, and you just can't play it. It's just like an unplayable 3/5. I mean, it's still a 3/5, right? But it's like, that is, I think the most likely place that Loki is going to end up for me, other than Arishem, is in a Athena heavy meta to beat
yes.
other Athena decks.
Correct, correct. As the mirror tech, that's so that you can just get the cards cheaper, which get the cards that you want to play in your own deck cheaper anyway.
Yeah. So let's talk about Arishem, who
Yeah.
is, as far as I can tell,
Live.
very alive. Very, very alive. And all his decks are like this, just absolute piles. Like, they're all kind of the same ridiculous pile. I was playing a deck cooked up by Derek, who is currently number 1 on the leaderboard. I believe his name in game is like Havoc OP. It's not, but I do listen to his deck building
It's
suggestions some
not.
of the time. And so the list I was playing, you'll be able to see it on my YouTube channel. It's going to be one of my like 8 decks from day one video. It was very interesting to me that there were not all that many Cassandra Novas to be found. And in addition, the deck I was playing ran both Shadow King and Shang-Chi. So that if I got Cassandra Nova, yes, it was bad, but they also needed other stuff in order to make that happen. Loki is absolutely a beast right now against those Thena decks, because it lets you basically play their deck into you. So if you
Yeah.
have a Shadow King or a Shang-Chi as well as a Loki, you're actually just really well set up, even if they Cassandra Nova you. And so I think that dynamic is kind of interesting to me. Is Arishem actually buffed off of this? I would say probably not. Like, if I'm going to be completely honest, like, people are going to probably say, oh, Arishem got better with this change. I don't think losing Leech and Doc was worth this. I just don't. Leech and Doc were really key, really incredible, really high performing cards. And if we still had them, I think the deck would be even better than it currently is. I do think that it is pretty close to its old power level, though. And that's an interesting note.
Yeah. Okay. So firstly, I want to agree that I don't think the loss of Leech and Dog Ock made RSM better. I think it's definitely still a bit of a worse deck, right? Because like we always talked about like cheating energy and playing the oppressing cards ahead of schedule.
Yeah,
RSM was insanely good at playing the oppressive cards ahead of schedule, right? And like we just lost two sort of kind of oppressive cards. So what else is ahead of schedule that you can play? I guess you can Legion early to lock out a game or something
yeah,
like that. That's one thing, I guess, right? But other than that, I think the fact that we lost, like to me, Dog Ock was the big one. Like Leech was big, but I think Dog Ock was bigger, right? Playing oppressive Dog Ock ahead of schedule, is not possible anymore because it's a different card right now. Having said that, though, yeah, energy cheat is still really insane, and we talked about it in like the previous topic. Now there's a new like god tier condition, win condition, right, which is Loki on turn 2 with Arisham, right?
very
So they
good.
kind of got some. They lost two things. They kind of got one thing. Is this one thing gonna be better than losing those two things? I don't think so. But like, yeah, it's still a very playable deck right now. And like KM mentioned, you can actually tag for, I would say, like the counters to the Arisham deck. Like if people really want to try and counter Arisham. That being said as well, it's also really good that like Arisham is like sort of alive, right? Not completely destroyed. Because
Yes.
in terms of monetary investment, the 6,000 tokens that you spend on Arisham are kind of safe.
Yeah.
I think it's still one of the best purchases like in the last month or so, because firstly, lots of value to the gameplay, right? Lots of new ways to play the game. It's a bit fun as well because it's random as heck. And also, yeah, it's a card that's still powerful in the game right now. So yeah, your investment is safe, guys.
Yeah. I I'm gonna be honest with you. A lot of people are getting a little bit angry at Second Dinner for like, oh, all these other cards nerfed for RSM. Why not just fix the problem? And I saw a great answer from Glenn Jones that, if I'm honest, part of me I think it's great because I already agree with it. But what he said was basically, we have these cards, Leech and Doc Ock and Loki, that are registering as problems anyway. And it's not like these are necessarily targeted at Arisham so much as they are future looking nerfs. Where it's just like, at some point, these cards have demonstrated that having them in the game in their current forms and having the ability to ramp into them early is just fundamentally a thing everyone hates. And so, yeah, I think it's pretty reasonable to get rid of them. The nerf they actually said they specifically targeted at RSM is actually the one that I think is my least favorite nerf of the bunch, and we'll get to that in a little bit.
Yeah.
But before we do that, let's talk about the untouched, maybe already best deck. Any Thena deck you really want to talk about? There's like 5. Pick a Thena deck. Let's talk about that. Where you at on that, Lambie?
Yeah, so they didn't do anything to the Tina decks, which is kind of interesting because I felt like those were actually like legitimate, like I wouldn't say problem, but legitimately very present in the meta, right? Because like you said, there's okay, firstly, the first thing is yes, there's like 6, 5, 6 Tina like possibilities you can play. The second thing is of course like this is like the de facto, like this is the new Angela Shell, right? That everybody plays in their like not combo wombo deck. So interesting that they thought that this was fine to stay for a longer period of time. Is it fine because it's actually like a fair thing to do and it's not like so-called overpowered per se, it's just good? Or is it fine because they just wanted the data to just like stir a bit more and see which version of the Tina deck is the actual oppressive one, that they nerf the cards other than Tina, you know, that kind of thing. Like they might want the pot to stir a bit longer and find out which direction the Tina deck going. The Tina deck goes that is too strong, you know. Because currently I feel like there is no too strong Tina deck. I think there are a lot of good Tina decks, but there isn't one that stands out to me as like, oh, this deck is just too good in the game. No, every single one of them feels like decent. But like I just want to ask like KM, what do you think is your like current favorite version of the Tina deck right now?
Right now, I prefer the Gwenpool move deck with Cassandra
Okay.
Nova. That's the one
It's
that I
fair
like
though,
the
right?
most. It's very fair, right? But it's a very fair deck that is leveraging an excellent points package. It has the ability to play Shang-Chi to beat things that are being a little more unfair. It has the ability to play Cassandra
Mm.
Nova to beat the other deck that is doing things on a similar level of power. And I think like, if I had to pick a deck, like basically what happened today was like I picked a deck and I started messing around with it and I lost some games and I was like, all right, well, let's play a deck I know is good. Let's see if it's still good. It was the Thena move deck. It was of course still good. I did like by the time I got my ranks back, I was like, I've learned nothing. This deck is exactly as good as it already was. Exactly fine. Totally great. What I'm interested in is there going to be a world in which you will want as a Thena deck to get a little bit more finicky to beat Arasham? And what I mean by that is, are we going to see a little bit of a resurgence in Dark Hawk Thena? Because that deck is better into Arasham for sure. and it is only a little bit worse into mirrors. Right now, the move mid range Thena deck is sort of the perfect balance of being good into Aurashem and also good into other Thena decks. And I'm wondering if the equilibrium has shifted a little bit such that it might be more valuable in the immediate term to be good into Aurashem.
Yeah, I honestly think Dina decks still have a bit more time to brew, like I said, I feel like when I played the Gwenpool, the one that you mentioned, the Gwenpool move version of the deck, like I said, it felt fair and
Yeah,
it had game versus everything,
yeah.
but having game versus everything doesn't actually mean it's like broken. So I guess there's some reason to like leave Tina alone and just let the pot stir a little bit more. I'm actually very curious to see like if like in the weeks to come there will be like a clear ultimate best Tina deck. Because currently I don't think there actually is.
Personally, I think it's probably pretty free to make her a 2-0. Like,
Yeah,
that just seems like a
exactly.
pretty free change that won't really affect anything. And maybe that means you shouldn't do it, but I think it means you should. If you can take a power off a card and you think it won't change anything, I think you should probably do it.
There's like no downside. Okay, not no. There's like low downside to doing that, right? Like
Yeah.
all your Tina decks will still be playable if she's
Yep.
2-0.
So let's talk about a nerf we both agree kind of sucked. They nerfed
It's
Blob
pointless.
from 15 to 13. Now it'll only eat up to 13. And I was playing blobless Arishem today, in part
Mm.
because other people were playing Loki and I was playing Shadow King, and I really didn't want my blob to get Shadow Kinged. But I was playing blobless Arishem. I was playing Magneto Arishem instead. Like it's tough. I feel like I don't feel like this is necessary. You are
Yeah.
meaningfully hitting the deck just by hitting Dr. Octopus and Leech alone. Then you are changing Loki into a card that might actually meaningfully impact your blob, right? Like old Loki you'd play when you didn't have blob in hand, you could still draw blob later, right? If you have now you have to have blob in hand if you want to play new Loki. And there's also a world where the deck you get doesn't have enough stuff in it to make it make sense. And
True.
more people are playing Shadow King right now. I just don't think this one was necessary. I just don't think it was necessary. I think Blob and Arishem. Blob has no home otherwise. If Blob isn't being played in Arishem, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't play Blob and Arishem, you probably should. I was just kind of messing around, but like the fact that I have to think about it, he should be an auto include there. He has no home otherwise. He doesn't go in any other decks.
I guess okay, so yeah, I want to agree on the fact that like we all know by now that like knocking one power off a card is a big deal. Knocking two power off
Yeah.
a card is a omega big deal, right? Like I always like to reference the Red Skull thing from way back.
Mm-hmm.
Like knocking power off a card is just incredibly impactful, right? In this sexton game whereby like every single point sort of does matter. Blob, yeah, like you said, because they already hit the two biggest culprits of game endingness, which is like Leech and Doctor Octopus, right? I don't think they needed to hit the Doctor Octopus as the third card in like their nerf spectrum. I think it's completely unnecessary. Having said that, though, I do think Blob is one of those cards that like will survive this like 15 to 13 power thing. I think it will survive simply because it's not like it's capped at 13. It's just that the min is 13. So like if you high roll, it's still like omega big, right? Sometimes like it could still be the 20 power card or 22 power card that you used to play. It's just that the baseline is a bit lower. So definitely impactful, but I think Blob is one of those cards that could survive this. Having said that, I think it's actually completely unnecessary to nerf the Blob to 13 power min, like at least in the current state of the game.
Agree. Speaking of completely unnecessary, we have we have a reversion to a previous completely unnecessary 2-power nerf. Apocalypse. I'll give them some credit on this one. I get that it's an easy joke to make. I was not opposed to the Apocalypse nerf when it happened. I thought it was kind of forward thinking. As I recall, it was during a period where discard was the clear second best deck.
Mm.
And they were doing like a forward thinking, like, okay, if we nerf the best deck, we're just going to have a discard in the metagame. And it was pretty good for a little bit after that. But then I would say the inflection point is like right around when Red Guardian dropped and Dracula became incredibly unsafe to play and Morbius became incredibly unsafe to play. And the meta was just like awkward for discard. I think that is like once that happened, it became unnecessary. And so I'm glad they recognized that and they were like, let's give Apocalypse his power back because I'm a big fan of discard, although I do think it has a fundamental issue of it is a deck that is all points, no tech, which
Yes.
means in order to
Need
ever be
point.
playable, it has to be the best points deck.
Yes.
That's a tough
Yeah,
spot.
like Okay, so I'm trying my best to remember if when we were doing that like discussion when this card was the second best deck, right? Did I actually say that I think this nerf was unnecessary? Because I'm very sure that I did, but if I wasn't, then I'm sorry. But like I do think that like 6/6 Apocalypse was super unnecessary. At least for the last few weeks, I've definitely thought that it was unnecessary. And now that it's back at 6/8, okay, fine. Yeah, and KM is right. Like if your deck is literally only around or only matters if you can do the most points, you kind of get way more affected if you lose points, right?
Yeah.
Like the blob going from 15 to 13, I think is unnecessary, but it's not that bad. Blob will survive. But if like a discard deck, if like this card became like 6/6, like it's very impactful, right? Because like this whole deck's purpose is points. It's literally just points. So now that it's back at 6/8, sadly I don't think this deck will have a resurgence in the meta right now. At least not yet. But like I do think that the extra 2 power that Apocalypse has right now is relevant as heck in a deck that like literally is only meant to just be about doing more points.
I have such love for the discard archetype. When I
Same.
first started playing Marvel Snap, it was the archetype I wanted to play. I looked at
Same.
Apocalypse and I was like, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen. I just read House of X and Powers of X, the first like actual comic books I've read as an adult human being, and he was
Mm.
awesome in that. It rocked. I'm a big fan of Apocalypse, always have been. I feel like discard as a deck, more than just the flavor, there's something I love about it, where it's this anti points and tech points deck where
Mm.
the point of discard in previous metagames has been you are a deck that is playing Shang-Chi and doing points. I am a deck that is immune from Shang-Chi and doing
And doing
points better.
points.
And so it's like that. I love that it exists. I really, really do. It is so awesome that discard exists. I am rooting for it. I am genuinely rooting for it because that is a fun dynamic to have because otherwise, without Loki especially, it's hard to punish these decks that are just like, I'm unshang-chiable and I run Shang-Chi and I do points very well, every Thena deck, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
if there is a discard deck that can do better than them on points and blank the Shang-Chi, that's a winning formula. I don't know if it's there, but I want it bad.
Yeah, I just want to echo your sentiments on everything you just said. Yeah, this card was actually the Apocalypse was actually the coolest thing to me when I started playing Marvel Snap as well. Like firstly, I was the biggest Apocalypse fan ever, right? Because I used to watch the 90s X-Men,
Mm.
the show, and Apocalypse was the big bad there. So like, yeah, I always felt he was very cool. Like hopefully, so I'm also always rooting for this card to be more of a thing.
So let's talk about alliances. For me, the rollout of alliances was really unfortunate. I tried to get all of my friends who I feel a great debt to for helping me be the content creator that I am into my alliance, and we ran out of space, and it sucked bad ass, and I really, really hated it. And Yo Woody asked me yesterday if I would pay $500 for unlimited spots in my alliance, and honestly, I thought about it, and I would. Like, I hate being put in the position of having to choose between my friends so much. It makes me so upset that I have to think about that. And I realize that's an insanely luxury purchase that's like purely hypothetical. But a lot of
Mm.
people have like gripes about alliances that are like, oh, the missions are hard to complete or whatever. That day was the worst day in the history of Marvel Snap for me. It was the worst one. It was the worst one. And I realize this is not a reasonable critique to levy, but it was
Yeah.
actually the worst day of Marvel Snap that I've ever had. And I've had days where it's like, oh, I lose 200 SP. This they do not compare to having to choose between your friends. It really sucked. It sucked for me.
Yeah. So my experience is similar but also a little bit different. Okay, firstly on the thing that I want to agree on is can we just get like a bit more slots in the in the
Jesus,
alliance? Like
yes.
5, 10, okay, 20 is like luxury, but I guess maybe 10 more slots. I mean it's just literally increasing the number, right? Like it's not I don't think it's difficult to do. But yeah, also one thing that I really like about alliances is that they gave us a chat in game. Like you can at least use it. Like most of the time it's just people like auto flexing their AQ wins and stuff like that. But I think at least having the option to have some in-game social systems is something that I really like. Obviously, when I used to do Hearthstones, all my opponents that lost to me always used the social systems for a wrong reason. But I still think it's nice to have in game, and I
Sorry.
think yeah, sorry, or like
Sorry.
only playing the meta deck. What a cringe lord, that kind of thing. Yeah, but anyway, so yeah, I like the social systems in game, and also for alliances, I feel like at least for me personally, because now I'm taking like a bit of a step back from like super try-harding this game, right?
Mhm.
At least for my community, the alliances like is keeping them very hyped, because even though some of the missions might be a bit like and the rewards might be sometimes a bit it lets the community like do stuff together, and like I think ever since alliances come out, my personal community has like exploded, like in terms of like activity, because like everyone is very hyped about like forming their own alliances. There's people making a high CL alliance. There's people making a like only if you have certain splits alliance. It's so weird. Like they just do this kind of stuff. But I guess that's exciting. And I think overall the general reception of alliances in Marvel Snap has been pretty positive. Like I saw recently on Twitter, like Johnson has this like best
Oh my
Korean guild
god, I
alliance
saw
like that.
that.
Like who's really competing to be the best Korean guild? Let's be real. But it's all good players inside. Let's not take that away from him, because I know all of them. So it's quite interesting. Like everyone has like their own versions of like what's cool to be an alliance,
Did
right?
you
So
did
I
you
think
see the picture where like
yeah.
Scarface basically soloed the entire alliance mission cap?
Yeah, there's bound to be one dude, right? Or like
That
two
was
dudes that hard carries
insane.
your.
Like, I was
The
just
funny
like,
thing is, if I feel like if I was as try hard as I used to be, I might be that guy as well. But it's kind of interesting how alliances lets you like it shows the numbers. I like to see the stats. Like sometimes I log in, I see like the alliances. This guy has been like playing so much, and then he's like hard carrying the entire
Mhm.
mission, that kind of thing. I just like to see the numbers as well. So yeah, shout outs to alliances being like cool. Maybe there are things that we could improve, which is like that, like the slots, right? I think more slots would be nice, and maybe like better rewards a little bit. Not to say that now it's not good, but like I hope that there will be a bit better rewards. But
I,
I think overall the alliance sentiment is really good, and bravo SD, I guess.
I guess, yeah. I mean, I'm never. I had a terrible time. Like my experience is terrible, but as long as other people are having fun, I guess. Speaking of your community, would you like to tell us how your
Hmm.
diner run ended? You want to talk
Okay,
about your
so
streamer privilege over here?
yeah, so this I had maximum streamer privilege, which firstly thank you Lam Fam, thank you my guys that supported me all the way. This topic is actually not really like one of the 8 most relevant
Oh
topics in
no, it
Marvel Snap.
is. It is.
Okay,
Streamer
okay.
privilege must be discussed.
Okay, it's topic number 8.5. But like I just found this very funny, because you guys know that I did this whole 10 times big blind thing for the RHM's diner, right? Well, so I decided to drop it to 5x big blind, because I think it's not realistic to do
Oh,
10x. So I did
really?
5. I did 5x, and the funny thing about it is when I streamed it the other day, I went from like 600 k bubs to like 35 million bubs in like 45 minutes, because literally my entire every single one of my opponents were just my chat. They were just trying their best to help me get my Cassandra Nova, and I just want to say thank you. This
Disgusting.
post is dedicated to you.
Disgusting.
It's a bit disgusting, yeah, but I guess sometimes it's nice to have friends, Then-
Yeah, until second dinner makes you kick them out of your alliance. It's great to
yeah,
have
true, true.
friends until that happens.
Okay, gonna add one more thing about the alliance topic since I forgot. Yeah, to make this a very like diplomatic and like everyone gets a chance thing, I've decided to just kick everyone out of my alliance every week. So I rotate the people, because if you cannot give me more slots, I will just have to do it in a way that everyone gets a chance. So the goal is after everyone completes their weekly mission, they get their spoils. I kick you all out, then I add a new bunch of people. So that's what I publicly declared, and then
That's
people were like
insane.
they were kind of down by the way. They were like, "All right, I'll be in your alliance next week." Waiting to get someone kicked out so I
Oh
can
my
join.
god. That is
So yeah, that was the
ridiculous.
yeah. People were down. I mean, but it's fun anyway.
Oh
So yeah,
my god.
that's just a. The last two topics are more of like a life update than actual like super important topics. But I
Hey,
guess sometimes lighthearted stuff is fine.
I have a whole Marvel Snap podcast where we don't talk about Marvel Snap. I don't mind having to.
Okay. Thank you so much for listening to us, guys. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this episode of 8 Cubes. I have been KMBest. He has been Lambie Series. I'm pointing the right direction, kind of, maybe. All right. We will see you in the next one. Lambie, take us out of here.
All right, like, comment, subscribe. The next one will be on KM's channel. We'll see you then. Bye bye.